The desert, a place where the sun never seems to rest. The air shimmers, the ground burns, and every breath feels heavy with heat. This is the American Southwest, one of the hottest regions on Earth. Here, summer isn't just a season, it's a test of survival. Days stretch endlessly under a sky so bright it hurts to look at. Water disappears, the soil cracks, and even the wind feels warm against the skin. But centuries ago, long before electricity or modern tools, people didn't just visit this land, they lived here. Native American tribes made their homes right in the heart of this blazing world. So how did they do it? How did the first people survive in a place where the sun seemed strong enough to burn life away? Their secret wasn't fighting nature, it was understanding it. They studied the desert, learned its moods, and used its power to stay alive. In this video, we'll explore the clever ways Native Americans survived the extreme summer heat and how their wisdom still inspires modern life today. To understand their brilliance, we first need to grasp the scale of the challenge they faced. The American Southwest is one of the harshest environments on Earth. The Sonoran, Mojave, and Great Basin deserts stretch across thousands of miles, a world of endless sand, rocky canyons, and blinding light. In these lands, temperatures could soar above 120 degrees, and the rain might not fall for months. The ground cracked open, rivers dried into dust, and the horizon rippled like fire. Even the nights, though cooler, carried the dry whisper of heat that never truly left. Survival here was nearly impossible. Water was rare, food unpredictable, and the seasons unforgiving. One wrong decision, one missed shade, one dry trail could mean death. Yet the native tribes didn't fight nature. They learned to move with it. They discovered that the desert, though fierce, offered everything they needed, if they listened, and that's where their real genius began, in learning to adapt, to turn the very power of the sun into a tool for survival. When we think of survival, we often imagine desperation, a struggle against harsh odds. But for the Native Americans of the Southwest, survival was a craft. It was not about fighting the desert, but about learning its secrets, shaping their lives to move in rhythm with heat, wind, and sand. Every decision they made, from the texture of their clothing to the curve of their homes, carried centuries of experimentation and quiet wisdom. Clothing was their first line of defense, a form of intelligent design created long before modern fabric science. In the burning daylight, they wore garments made from light, breathable materials, woven plant fibers, cotton spun by hand, and soft deer hides tanned to stay supple even under the relentless sun. Natural dyes made from earth pigments, roots, and minerals gave the fabric a reflective quality, softening the glare of sunlight. Instead of trapping heat, these materials allowed the air to move freely around the skin, a living ventilation system. Men often wore loincloths or breechcloths with minimal coverage, balancing protection with freedom of movement, while women wore light skirts or dresses woven from yucca fibers or cotton. Some tribes used rabbit-skin cloaks during cooler desert nights, while others crafted sandals from yucca leaves or agave fibers, the first heat-proof shoes, allowing them to walk across scorching sands without burns. Even their headgear had purpose. Woven reed hats or animal hide caps shielded the eyes from the blinding sun, much like natural sunglasses. Every garment told a story. The dyes reflected the colors of the land, red like the clay, yellow like the mesquite bloom, and white like the salt flats. They dressed not just to endure the desert, but to belong to it. Their homes were living organisms built to breathe, adapt, and protect. In the Pueblo regions, the adobe house was a masterpiece of thermal control. Adobe, a mix of clay, straw, sand, and water, hardened into thick earthen walls that absorbed the cool of the night and released it slowly during the day. Windows were narrow to block sunlight, and flat roofs collected rainwater or provided sleeping platforms during hot nights. Inside, the temperature could remain 20 to 30 degrees cooler than the desert outside. No electricity, no machines, just the logic of the land. Elsewhere, tribes like the ancestral Puebloans, Anasazi, carved underground or cliff dwellings, using stone and earth as natural insulation. These homes, often tucked into canyon walls, were shaded for most of the day. They caught gentle breezes, avoided direct sunlight, and stored the earth's coolness. Each layer of rock, each carved step, reflected an understanding of geology and airflow far ahead of its time. Nomadic tribes, such as the Mojave and Yuma, built brush shelters, flexible, dome-like frames of willow or mesquite branches covered with grass or reeds. These could be quickly built, easily moved, and provided just enough shade while allowing hot air to escape through the roof. At night, when the temperature dropped dramatically, they could be covered with animal hides to trap warmth. Their architecture wasn't decoration, it was collaboration with the earth itself. Every home, from the deepest cave to the lightest brush hut, spoke the same truth. The desert doesn't bend to you, you bend to it. Water was life, and finding it was the difference between life and death. But for the Native Americans, water wasn't simply searched for, it was sensed, almost felt through instinct and inherited knowledge. Before dawn, some would collect morning dew on woven mats or animal skins, wringing it into bowls before the first light of day. Others cut into cacti like the saguaro, prickly pear and barrel cactus, using sharp stones to extract their hidden stores of water-rich pulp. They studied the flight paths of birds and the direction of ant trails, because animals too followed the scent of moisture. If ants carried shiny grains of sand from a hole, it meant groundwater was nearby. If mesquite trees grew in clusters, there was likely a hidden spring beneath them. They dug shallow wells in riverbeds long gone dry, drawing up cool, filtered water from below the surface. And when they found it, they guarded it, storing it in clay pots lined with pine resin to keep it fresh for weeks. Some tribes even buried their water pots in shaded pits, turning the desert itself into a natural refrigerator. Their relationship with water wasn't about taking, it was about knowing when to wait. They learned patience from the desert, and in return it taught them how to live. Every drop, every breeze, every grain of sand held meaning, and this deep harmony with nature would shape not only their survival, but their very culture and belief in the rhythm of the earth. In the desert, everything was alive, even silence. Every wind shift, every blooming cactus, every animal track whispered a message about the changing seasons. To survive, Native Americans learned to read this language. They didn't just endure the desert, they danced with it. Life in the desert wasn't static, it moved with the seasons. Tribes such as the Paiute, Shoshone, and Apache practiced seasonal migration, moving like shadows across the land in search of shade, food, and water. When the sun turned cruel and the valleys burned, they climbed to higher ground, pine forests, cooler plateaus, and river-fed meadows. There they hunted deer, collected berries, and rested under thick canopies. When the frost came, they returned to the desert floor where mild winter sun and stored food sustained them. This migration wasn't random wandering. It followed precise timing, learned through generations who watched the sky and the earth. The blooming of a flower, the call of a bird, or the shifting wind patterns were signals of change. They traveled light, carrying woven baskets, stone tools, and dried provisions, enough to sustain but never enough to burden. They knew that in the desert, movement was survival. Stay too long, and the land would take everything back. Their diet reflected the same intelligence. The three sisters, corn, beans, and squash, were more than crops. They were a living ecosystem. Each plant supported the others, creating a small world of cooperation in the dry soil. This farming system, passed down through oral tradition, still stands as one of the most sustainable agricultural designs on Earth. Beyond farming, they harvested the wild. They ground mesquite pods into sweet flour, roasted agave hearts, and plucked prickly pear fruit for both food and medicine. Seeds were parched and stored. Wild onions and yucca roots were roasted in earth ovens, and pine nuts gathered in highlands were traded across tribes. They also understood preservation. Before refrigeration, they mastered sun-drying, turning meat into jerky, corn into powder, and fruit into leathery strips. These foods could last through dry spells, allowing entire communities to endure months without a fresh harvest. Even salt was harvested from dried lakes and used to cure meat or seasoned food, ensuring nothing spoiled. The desert's greatest enemy, heat, became their most powerful ally. Fire wasn't just for cooking, it was for engineering. They used it to fire pottery, hardening clay into vessels that could store water or withstand boiling temperatures. They shaped stone tools by heating and cooling them, making them sharper and more durable. Controlled fires cleared brush, renewed soil, and drove game animals toward hunters. Even air circulation inside homes was engineered with fire, Small hearths and smoke holes drew cool air from below and released hot air above, creating a simple yet effective ventilation system. They turned survival into science, centuries before science was written down. And perhaps the most beautiful part? Their relationship with the land was never about possession. They took only what was needed, shared everything with their community, and trusted that nature, if respected, would always give again. Their story wasn't just one of survival, it was one of philosophy. For the Native Americans, every rock, stream, and gust of wind carried spirit. The desert was not something to be conquered. It was a living teacher. They saw no separation between humans and nature. The earth was their mother, the sun their father, and every creature their relative. This belief shaped every aspect of life, how they hunted, built, and even thought. Before cutting down a tree, they offered prayer. Before drawing water, they thanked the spirits of the spring. If an animal was hunted, nothing was wasted. Bones became tools, hides became clothing, and meat became nourishment. The act of taking life came with reverence, never greed. This deep respect created a sense of balance. Where modern civilization sought to control nature, they sought to belong to it. Their villages were built around natural formations, never against them. Their paths curved with the rivers, and their rituals echoed the sound of rain. The sun, the same force that could kill, was also sacred. To them it symbolized rebirth, energy, and time itself. Tribes like the Hopi and Zuni held ceremonies such as the sun dance, a sacred expression of endurance and gratitude. Through song, rhythm, and movement, they honored the light that made crops grow and guided their lives. Their chants were not words to the sky, they were conversations with it. They believed that by showing respect, the desert would in turn show mercy. Firelight ceremonies painted the night with moving shadows, dancers covered in clay and feathers, each representing an element: earth, wind, fire, and water. These weren't performances. They were prayers in motion. No one survived alone. The desert demanded cooperation. Families, elders, and children formed tight-knit circles of mutual dependence. When food was scarce, it was shared equally. When a home needed building, everyone worked, from mixing adobe to carrying timber. Wisdom passed through stories told around fires, stories that weren't just entertainment, but blueprints for survival. Women gathered food and managed water storage. Men hunted and protected, elders taught and children observed, learning patience, respect, and gratitude from the world around them. Their unity wasn't just emotional, it was ecological. Each person was part of a larger system that mirrored the land itself, interconnected, balanced, alive. And through this harmony, this refusal to dominate, they thrived in a place that outsiders found unlivable. They didn't conquer the desert. They became the desert, calm, enduring, and eternal. Centuries later, as the world faces rising temperatures and worsening droughts, modern science is beginning to echo what Native Americans knew all along. The secret to survival isn't domination, it's understanding. Architects now study traditional adobe homes, amazed by their natural cooling power. The same thick clay walls that once shielded native families from the desert sun are now inspiring passive cooling homes around the world. These designs use earth, shade, and airflow instead of electricity, proving that ancient methods can outsmart modern heat. Farmers, too, are looking back to the past. The Three Sisters planting system, corn, beans, and squash growing together, has become a model for sustainable agriculture. It saves water, enriches soil, and resists drought far better than modern monocrops. In places like Arizona and New Mexico, communities are even reviving traditional water harvesting, collecting rain and channeling runoff just as their ancestors did, turning dry land fertile once. Again, survivalists and climate researchers study how tribes manage to find shade, conserve energy, and stay hydrated with minimal resources. What once seemed like old customs are now recognized as scientific brilliance born from deep observation of nature. And perhaps the greatest lesson of all is a moral one. The Native Americans didn't try to conquer the heat. They listened to it. They watched, adapted, and moved with it. They lived in rhythm with the land, not above it. As we face a future of hotter summers and shrinking water supplies, their wisdom feels more alive than ever. Because sometimes the answers we need most aren't found in new inventions. They're found in the echoes of those who learned to live gently under the same burning sun.